Oh, cool. How many are not from Colorado?
Rise of the humans.
Have fun. Creativity, strategic thinking, problem solving.
Hey everybody. All right, I think we're ready to kick off this female founders panel. I'm not gonna lie, this is the thing I am most personally excited to hear about. First and foremost, badass woman myself, few over there. And I think we like to support each other and hear from each other and have allies and have great conversations about how we got where we are. So today, they are gonna do a great informal conversation, introduce themselves, and then of course, we want your questions. This is meant to be interactive. How did you get where you are? What happened along the way? What do you recommend? Because it might seem scary. Maybe you're looking within the ecosystem on the software side. Maybe you're looking on the consulting side. How do I get started? So we all have a lot we can learn from this. And so please take advantage of it. Not only will they have their own questions and be presenting, but then this will roll into a table talk as we start lunch. So stay at these front tables, meet them, talk to them, ask them for their life advice. That is why they are here. So without further ado, I'm gonna welcome them to the stage. We have Blakely Graham from TaskRay. We have Stephanie Hagan from the CRM firm. We have Veronica Hugh from PC Consulting and Jenn Knight from Agent Sync. And these ladies will wow you. And we're so glad they're with us today. So thank you guys. Have fun.
Well, thank you. Make sure everything's working. Good morning. We have a tremendous panel. I'm so excited for these women up here. I've known two of them for many years and been on a journey. So today we're gonna kind of start off with intros from each of us, just kind of giving us how we got here, what we do, a little about ourselves, and then we'll open it up. And if no one has questions, I have a nice little list, but I'm hoping a lot of you wonderful females and males, I see a few familiar faces that have known us in the room, have some great questions for us. So first off, I'll start on the left. Jenn.
I thought I was going last. Okay. I'm Jenn Knight. I'm the co-founder and CTO of a company called Agent Sync. We are actually both an ISV and OEM partner for Salesforce, and we're an application that is supporting the insurance space, bringing agents into the ecosystem for carriers and agencies and keeping them compliant as they go through that process. I started my journey in the Salesforce ecosystem in 2007, so it's been a minute. And grew up through the kind of tech side of that. I was in business applications at LinkedIn, at Dropbox, and at Stripe before I broke off and founded a company in the space. So I've seen a lot of different sides of Salesforce and really excited to meet y'all and talk to y'all.
Awesome. Thanks, Jenn. Veronica, do you want to tell us a little bit about you?
Yes. My name is Veronica Hugh. I am the founder of PC Consulting, so implementation and managed services Salesforce provider. My journey with Salesforce started in 2007 also. So I started working for a SaaS company that used Salesforce and then went to a reseller of that software and developed a sales operations team. So I built it over 7 years to about 9 people and then left there and went to a consulting firm where I did sales operations there as well. And last year decided to start my own consulting company. So I've been working with many companies over the last couple of years and implementing Salesforce and then providing managed services. And super excited to be here today.
Awesome. Well, welcome to the crazy side. Blakely, do you want to tell us a little bit about your...
Sure. I have a special mic. Is that working? Okay. Just make sure I have a special mic. I'm Blakely Graham. I'm one of the co-founders and the former CEO of TaskRay. TaskRay is a work management platform that was focused specifically on the post-sale experience. So many of you know that as customer onboarding. I got my start, it's always a little fuzzy on the when, but it was around 2002 or 2003. So right after Salesforce had launched, I was working for a .com here in the Colorado area that had a failing Oracle/SAP implementation. So they asked me to kind of come in and parachute and try to fix that. And the way we ended up fixing it was bringing Salesforce in, which was a little known startup. We were their largest enterprise customer at the time. and I think we had 125 seats. So it was a long time ago, and then since then, I always call myself a bit of a mutt. I think generalist is probably the kinder term, but I've been in operations, I've been in marketing, I've run product teams, account management teams, and just the common thread has always been bringing Salesforce into support. So just a long-time fan of the ecosystem and the opportunity that is afforded all of us and all of you.
Well, awesome. Well, my name's Stephanie Hagan. I'm the CEO and founder of the Serum Firm, which is a SI or implementation partner, as well as we have an ISV company called FirmWorks that we launched about almost 2 years ago. So I've got some of my lovely team members over here on the right. I'm excited to have them. We have about 45 consultants, East Coast to West Coast, on the implementation side, and why I started it was I spent my entire career in consulting, so 21 years, and I was told you had to choose career or, being a mom, and I didn't believe it. And finally, it triggered, and I'm like, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do it differently, and I'm gonna build a team. So 8 years ago, I started the Serum Firm, and I'm proud to say that 4 out of 6 of our leadership are female, and 70% of our team is female. So really exciting. Thank you. So passionate about this, and open to any questions. Does anyone want to kick us off?
How did you get the, I suppose, inspiration / courage / like, all right, we're going to do this to go out on your own, and how did you know that it was time?
So the question is, how do we get the inspiration to take on this crazy journey, and how do we know it was the time? I'll start on the Jen.
Okay, we'll work right on. Inspiration. So my co-founder is actually my husband, and he and I had worked together at LinkedIn in the early days. He was in operations and I was in systems, and we built a lot of things together at LinkedIn through a really important part of their time in scaling. So it was 2011 to 2014, and from there we thought it'd be really fun to build something together, but there wasn't a great thought of what that thing would be. I left LinkedIn to go to Dropbox. He left LinkedIn to go to a company called Zenefits. And while he was at Zenefits, he actually got to see front and center the problems around onboarding agents at scale in a compliant way if you're a scaling agency in the insurance space. So the inspiration, because we're in a very specific niche corner of insurance, came from in life, a day in life in the job of seeing a problem and trying to figure out how to use technology to solve it. I lovingly say I got conned into it over dinner, but I like to build things. So we did that. For us, I kept my job so that we had a paycheck, and I worked full-time at my job at Stripe because I'd moved there, and he took the really hard job of being alone in our kitchen, trying to figure out how to bring our product to market. So we made that commitment, and we made it actually more of a let's try this and see how it goes. Once we got, I think, about 8 customers, and we were getting close to $1 million in revenue, that was when we decided it was time for us to really invest in it, and that's when I decided to quit my job. So for us, it was about an 18, 20-month journey. There was a kickoff point of figuring out that we could balance it in our lives. And the inspiration was, at some point in your career, you either decide that that's what you're going to do for the next 20, 30 years or whatever that might look like, or try something new. So we were very lucky to have the opportunity at that point to say, let's try something new. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. That's okay. Working in the tech space, I think that's a big privilege, actually, that many of us have, where we can experiment with something. If it doesn't work, it's not a ding on your resume. It's a thing that you tried to do, and that was what kind of motivated us. So,
awesome, Veronica, what was your turning point?
So my journey was a little bit different than I think the 3 of you guys. So I was working as a VP of Sales Operations for a consulting firm north of Boston, and I was working. This part's not different than any of your guys' story, I'm sure. So I was working 70, 80 hours a week, running the company, doing consulting, doing all of these things. About 6 years ago, my husband got really sick, and he was in and out of the hospital a lot. During COVID, there was a year that I think he spent like 150 days in the hospital or something. So, and my work was amazing. They were great. I was able to be there for him, work remotely, do whatever I need to do, work off hours, etc. The beginning of last year, the doctor said he was going to have his leg amputated, and I wanted to be home. And so I couldn't run a consulting firm of 40 people and work from home 100% of the time when I was the only person working from home. And also being the person who provides the insurance and is the breadwinner, because he hadn't really worked for 4 years before that because of his medical issues, it was a super hard decision. Being able to replace that income and knowing that we were still going to be able to sustain our lives and pay for college and do all of those fun things was super, super hard. So I did some consulting on the side just to kind of see if I could actually do it on my own. And when I realized that I could, after about 6 to 8 months, that's when I finally made the decision last June to give my notice at my job and leave. The inspiration for me, it was my 5-year plan to start a consulting company, but that 5 years I think would have been about 2 years from now. So, and I did it 2 years ago. So thanks, Jason, for accelerating that timeline. But it was wonderful that I was able to be home with him and really take care of him and being able to take him and, go to rehab and see him and all of those things. So I'm super fortunate and grateful to be able to do that. The courage was really just the support from my family and friends, like telling me constantly, like, you're doing the right thing, you can do this. And that's my story.
Blakely.
Sort of similar, not similar. Sorry, that I don't want to belittle like what you had to go through, but similar in that it was very, very personal reasons. So when I started talking with my co-founder, his wife was pregnant at the time, and I had 2 kids at home. I had a baby and a toddler, and I was pregnant with both of those kids at 2 different companies, and I did not get maternity leave for either company. And in fact, the company that I was with when I met Eric, I was pregnant at the time, and they were putting in short-term disability to cover maternity benefits and told me I had a pre-existing condition, which was incredible to me. And I thought that the company had the opportunity to do the right thing by me, and they chose not to. So when Eric and I got together, we did not have a problem to solve. We didn't know that we were going to build TaskRay. In fact, we weren't even called TaskRay at that time. We were called Bracket Labs. But I had a passion for Salesforce. Eric had a passion for building product. And together, we knew that we could build a company that just did things a little bit differently, that was not investor-backed, so we could make some of our own decisions. And we were also both very fortunate. This maybe get to part of the root of your question. Like, we were both very fortunate to have partners at home that could also support us in doing this. So that's one of the things you do have to consider, is how much risk you're willing to take. But regardless, it was something very personal that drove us to want to create a better company for people.
It's interesting how many of our stories overlay. The day I knew it was right was I was 9 months pregnant with my second child, my son, and I'm very short, so really, really large, sitting there, and I got pulled in, and it was 5 days before I delivered him. And I worked for a company and looked at me, he's like, I didn't consider you for the COO position because you were pregnant. And I looked at him, I'm like, I put my heart and soul into everything I do. And I couldn't be, and I was 70 plus hours a week. I was billing 70 hours and leading a wonderful team of 15. And I just looked at him, I'm like, there is nothing left. Like, there's nothing left to give. And I can't put my heart and soul into something that doesn't support me. So I went and had my son, sat there and wrote on paper exactly like what I was gonna do. And 8 weeks, because I also didn't really have maternity, went in and delivered my resignation and said, I'm gonna go be a mom. And they said, that's great. I carried my little guy out, drove home, filed my Secretary of State paperwork, and never looked back. I'm like, see ya. So really also the support at home. My husband was still working, so we had insurance, through him. So I was able to, be a mom and do it. And I did it to create something different. Good work-life balance. We have paternity leave. I was so excited when we were able to add that to our benefits because I was really passionate about it because I didn't have it. Throughout my career, just providing, I have women who are part-time. I have women who are 30 hours, 32, 40, and they can flex between, and giving them those boundaries so that they can pick up their kids. They can have both a career as well as be a mom. So that was my passion. That's when I knew it was right and never looked back. Other questions?
Anybody else? Oh, Brita. Hello. Thank you, Ebony.
Hi, I'm Ebony, CEO and founder of EV Labs, and I haven't heard the full panel, but have a very similar story, so just kudos to you for deciding and creating new experiences. I feel like through COVID, I started my company too in COVID, and it's just taught us to be fearless, and so just kudos to you guys, and kudos to you specifically for that story, because that's crazy. But look at you now, and don't go back.
Thank you.
Love it.
I also wanted to say thanks. That's amazing to hear your guys' stories. I'm curious, now that you're in the roles that you have, how do you maintain that work-life balance? Because I'm sure you have very demanding goals, so I'm curious how you juggle it.
Yeah.
I'll take that one first. My team, I think we're pretty good at it. Most weeks, my team works 40 hours. We're not perfect. We, flex in, or their normal work weeks. I still naturally step in. I protect my team. So if they need a little extra hands or whatever it may be, I'm the first to step in. But I can say after 8 years, this is the first time I've actually taken normal vacations and didn't check my email. So I'm getting better time over time. Really, it was important for me to provide that first for my team, and I'm kind of like a mom. You're like the last to do it. I don't have a perfect answer.
Yeah, I'll give you an honest answer in that I was very protective of work-life balance for our team, to the point where I'm a huge believer in recharging and vacations. We ended up putting in a bonus of $1,000 if you actually took a vacation and didn't respond to your emails. And so, because it's hard, right, for people to do it. There were not many people that stayed after hours. People kind of came in later. It caused some friction sometimes. But work is not life. I mean, it's a huge part of your life. I get it. We should honor it, but it's not your life. And so I don't think anyone really should be in an office for, 40 hours is so arbitrary. 30 should be plenty. But to be honest about your question, I protected the team, but I did not protect myself. And so my co-founder burnt out halfway through. I burnt out toward the end, and my other partner also experienced burnout. So there is something about being a founder that it is hard for you to take care of yourself. And 2 years, I haven't been we sold the company 2 years ago. It has taken me 2 years to recover, and now I started Substack just to talk about the recovery and what maybe I could have done differently. So I encourage you to follow along because I didn't do it right.
I think I'm like 50-50. So sometimes I do a really good job, and then sometimes I don't do a really good job at all. Working from home and just being one person, it's really easy to travel. But then I'm working all the time while I'm traveling. So we just recently took a 24-day trip to Hawaii and Alaska, and I worked every day until we were on our way to Alaska, and the boat lost Wi-Fi. So I had to take 5 days off and had to email all my clients and say, I'm so sorry, I'm in the middle of the ocean. So I was forced to take some time off, so that was good. But I do block off Wednesday mornings and Friday mornings, and then Friday early afternoon. So my husband and I play poker, so we play poker on Tuesday and Thursday nights, so I don't take meetings before 10 a.m. on Wednesday and Friday, and because it's usually a late night. And then my mom and I go out every Friday afternoon for nails and shopping and things like that. So I'm like 50-50. I have some really good discipline sometimes, and then when it comes to vacation, my husband's always like, so how many meetings do you have tomorrow? I'm like, let's just not talk about it.
Oh.
We're
I'm now
sharing
borrowing
now.
a mic. I think I'm maybe will echo what Blakely said, is that it's an interesting conversation. I think as you think about it for your team and you think about it for yourself, those are really different. And it depends on the stage of the company and demands. So I think for me, what I've thought a lot about is how do I preserve what I value and what am I going to give up, but try not to make it overly rigid about a norm for what is balance. I think it's just a mix. Like, frankly, and like if you decide to found a company, there are going to be periods of time where you have to be available all the time. And if you deny yourself that reality, it's just very, very frustrating. Whereas, I love what you said of building a structure that allows for that reality, but balances it with some life, because life is going to look different. And I was a co-founder who took a week and a half, 2 weeks hard offline after my daughter was born, and I was back 25% of the time 2 weeks after, because we were Series A. My engineering team was very small, and there was no other choice. And I was very lucky to have the support and the situation and the physicality at that point to be able to do that. But we have 4 months parental leave because I don't want that or 3 months for 12 weeks for everyone. I don't want that for my team. But it took me standing up in front of the company and saying, I know that some of you know that story about me, and that's not what I want for you. We want 12 weeks for all parents to be able to go out, but I couldn't have taken 12 weeks. It wouldn't have worked for the company at our stage, and I can't be mad about that. That was a choice that I made about what I wanted to do and how I wanted to balance it. We've made choices around being present for our daughter. I also didn't want my daughter to be raised by a nanny. So I don't do that, right? But that means that I don't log on certain times of the day, and that's how I found that balance for myself. So I think it's really, really personal, and it evolves and it changes as time goes on. Really, the biggest thing that I think about a lot is looking out 5 or 10 years. Do I want to look back on this and have I made time for the things that were valuable? Weddings, family, being present to watch her grow up in the capacity that I could with the decision I made to be a founder. So I think it's fair to think about what you want to do for your team, but be really real that what you do for yourself can't always look like what you do for your team. And that's just the nature of this business. And so it depends a lot on the shape of the company. I also say we're a tech company that's VC backed, where there are really, really high expectations and demands. So every time we did a raise and needed to meet that obligation, that's a double down, buckle down time. And that was also a choice that we made. When you sign up for that, you sign up for that. So I just encourage everyone to think long and hard about what you're signing up for. We can always improve things and make changes, but there are sort of dynamics that do exist. And then I just worked to find balance that made me feel confident in where we were today and kind of looking back at what I optimized for.
One other thing I found a few years ago, I hired an executive coach for myself. I invested in myself, and that was a really big turning point. I still remember my first meeting with her. I had 300 unread emails in my inbox, and I'm like, I don't even know what I need. I need help. So that's been a long journey. That's something I did for me, and she gave me different tools to help, but it's still, for me, each of you set your own parameters. A 60-hour work week for me is like a cakewalk compared to 80, 90 hours a week of how many years of consulting. I can balance. I have a stay-at-home husband now. He runs my kids, so we don't have a nanny. He's great at it. He really loves his vacuum cleaner, which is amazing. He came to me and he's like, I love this one. Can I buy it? And I'm like, you can buy whatever vacuum you want. I don't care. It's great. So he's passionate about it. He's really great at it and better than me. So I have a great support system. And then weekends are 100% my kids. I generally don't work on weekends, rarely, and even to the point where I sometimes don't even check my email. So weekends have really become our family time, and it works for us. So
I'll just echo the support system. I think it's like every woman needs to talk about that 1,000 times because it's really hidden. My husband is my co-founder, so we are the CEO and the CTO of a company. We got support. We don't live near family. So we do have a school and a supplemental support because I need it. There's no world in which I could do my job and be the primary parent to our children. And it is unrealistic and an unfair expectation for anyone to do that. It's not actually how the world works. So that's also a decision. Now we had to figure out how to decide to do that in a way that I felt good about, right? And that's home for dinner every night, put my kid to bed, check out on the weekends, right? I have a very specific way that I did that, but what wasn't ever going to work was to pretend like I was gonna hold it all. So whether that is someone in your family, your partner who supports you, it's a really, really critical thing. And I loved, having time with mom that forces you to check in. It's like, those are so essential. I think women get put in that position of believing somehow that you're supposed to show up in all those ways. So it's important, always important to me to say, you don't ever do it alone. No one does it alone. Some people do for a while. It's extremely grueling. And if you're going to do it for the long haul, you got to do it with support, whatever that looks like for you.
I think one other piece, work-life balance, people always say, I think it's a little bit more work-life integration. I think it's unrealistic for, if work isn't going well, that you're not going to carry it home. Or if something's going on, your kid's sick, parents sick, your husband's going through something. That's going to carry naturally into your workday. Just admitting it and being okay with it, because sometimes we're not okay. And our team, we really enforce, if you're having a bad day or something's going on, we really have a family environment. They lean in, they help. My husband got COVID at the beginning. I had random meals that showed up on my porch from not only my team, but also a client. He made us an apple pie, a homemade one. I'm like, seriously? So it's a whole community. We didn't get here alone.
Hi, first of all, thank you again for your stories and thank you for sharing it. What will be some of the tips that you can give us to keep growing professionally in this industry?
Blakely, do you want to go?
Sure. So a couple of things. Just in this industry, in the Salesforce ecosystem, something we did at our company was ask every single person to get certified. And we gave them just $100 cash the day they passed their test. And that was for the first test. But then, there's probably 100 tests now, 100 certifications. But that was really important for us in our company, for every person just to have some foundation of language in the Salesforce ecosystem. I also think a coach, as a rising leader professionally, a coach is such a gift to yourself. So I would highly encourage that for your for your personal professional growth skills. Chime in. What are some other ideas?
So I'm going to echo the coach piece because it's a huge game changer. I mean, you have to invest in yourself, exactly what you said, and it can be a really big investment sometimes, and you have to kind of try to rationalize that financial piece of it. But what you gain out of that is so huge. I hired my coach probably about 15 months ago or so, and complete game changer. I also have a mentor that helps me, so I can bounce ideas off of, and they have more experience than me. It's been really great getting to know the three of you guys, because they've started companies and grown, which is one of my goals, but I also kind of had to have a lifestyle business for a little bit here to be able to get through some things. But So just being able to invest in yourself and rationalize that. And just to echo what you said too about, being vulnerable and understanding that you cannot do it by yourself. You just can't. So whether it's, having to have groceries delivered and not step foot in a market basket or grocery store in the last 4 years. So yeah, it's really, really important.
Roundtables too, like joining a CEO roundtable or a Birds of a Feather, a sales roundtable, a marketing roundtable. Like those groups are really, really helpful.
One thing that I've always appreciated, like when I think about growth in the Salesforce ecosystem particularly, is that you can experience so many different types of businesses and so many ways that businesses are run. And so through the course of my career, I got into the Salesforce ecosystem as an admin at a solar company. From there, I went to Blue Wolf. This was a very long time ago, before they were an IBM company. And I was one of their engineers on their services side, and that allowed me for about a year and a half. I didn't love consulting, but to see kind of how Salesforce was deployed. This was about 2009, 2010, so a while ago, a little earlier days, where there were fewer certifications and fewer things, and it was actually a little bit before, right around Apex coming out. But that allowed me to see a bunch of different ways that Salesforce was deployed. Took a break, went into nonprofit, saw how Salesforce was used in profit, learned a lot about nonprofits being run, went to LinkedIn, did systems there, and then from there I stayed more in the tech side of the world. But those experiences helped me round out an understanding of business more generally, right? And then thinking about how applications power business or don't power business, or how businesses scale or struggle to scale. And as I went into founding, that breadth of experiences and not just being in one place was really helpful as I think about our customers and I think about what we're tackling. So I think that's a thing that I really love about Salesforce in particular, is that you aren't pigeonholed into like one industry, one type of company, also one type of job, and leaning into that can give you a really well-rounded view that isn't always accessible to others. So I'll just echo that.
I'd resonate the rounded experience. Over 21 years, I have worked with various different companies, and really that just prepared me not only with this diverse knowledge, but also people who supported me. When I had questions, like how to figure out how to start your business, like how to navigate these. And there's lots of channels on the women's side here in Colorado. There's a women's business center that actually will help women start businesses. They will even connect you to funding. I wish I would have known all of this, like when I started, because I did the journey without it. All things learned. Working with people, there's a women's founders group in the Salesforce ecosystem. For everyone, there's about 4,000 North American partners. Only about 112 or 114 are female-owned or led. So it's a very small group. That's become a safe space for me to ask questions and say, hey, how are you guys handling this? Did you run into this? Like, how can we be better together? How can we have a bigger voice with Salesforce? So that's another way, and absolutely the coaching. That's the biggest.
All right, we got another question.
Thank you. So I am 3 weeks into managing a CRM team. So going from like the day-to-day grunt work of admin analysts to all of a sudden overseeing the whole extent of all of our Epics features and tasks. How did you manage the shift from the day-to-day work to managing a team? Because I do the day-to-day work at night now and the management during the day, and it's not sustainable, I've found.
I think that is the experience of the vast majority of new managers. It's a really, really hard one. A couple things I always think about with that. One, there can be two contributing factors to that: how your company has set you up and your own ability to let things go. And so when I think about that from a management perspective, when I have people who are going from an IC to a new manager, I make it very clear now, and this is something I've learned over the course of my career and how I was set up to succeed or not set up to succeed, that my expectation is that they are going to do the work of being a manager. Now, I think as you become a manager, the gratification and instantaneous like feedback response of getting something done is very different, because now it's about people and not about what you delivered in a given day. So most people need a little bit of a transition. It's not like a cold turkey thing where you go from like doing the work to like managing people and you're like, I feel totally gratified and fulfilled. Like everybody, like if you've been in the IC position and you really enjoy it, I always say everyone loves to tinker a little bit. So it's about like, how do we make sure that that transition happens and the bulk of your time is allowed to be focused on the team. So that's maybe 70% of your time is on the team and 30% is still doing some IC work, but you're really being allowed to invest in that. Where that I have personally been set up to fail in the past, and that is being given the manager position, but not the capacity on my team to take over the work that I was doing as an IC. And so that's where I'm like, if you're in that situation, it's not going to be sustainable, and that's a conversation with your company. The second piece is personal, which is like the love of self-sabotage, which is you did it, you know how you'd like it done, you know you could do it quickly, and that is just a habit you got to break. Right? Building that ability to trust your team, to allow someone to execute a task in a way that is different than the way that you would execute on it, and know that your job is to help them see that through and help them learn, even if that means it takes a little while longer, is hard. I think it's just worth saying it's hard, but that is actually what you're doing as a manager, because you're trying to amplify your skill set through a group of people and help them grow and learn. So I always think about that. I've always thought about that in my past and even now, of where is my behavior supporting the team and growing? Where is my behavior limiting their growth? And if I'm limiting their growth, why am I doing it? Am I doing it because there's something that's really, truly critical path that I'm worried about? Okay, maybe I have to get this one across the line, but how do I hand that off to them over time so it's not as high stakes? Or am I doing it because I really like safety blanket want to do it myself because I'll feel better about that, but this wouldn't be a problem if I gave them the space to learn. So it's a lot of, you know, yay therapy and coaching. It's a lot of like introspection, but that's like the art of it, right? And I think it's also worth saying, not everybody loves being a manager. So we have times where folks have said, I want to be a manager. I said, okay, let's do a 6-month stint with it. I'm going to talk to you about it. And at the end of it, let's check in. It took me a while personally as an engineer to get to that place where I was like, I don't write code every day. But it took me realizing that the value that I can bring is helping people with other things. They write better code. They write more creative code. They all that, you know, every day. My team can do more than I could do on my own. It's a lot of work, and it's a constant dialogue. I'll say that too. There's never a moment, I don't think, where you get to it where you're like, oh, now I'm just a manager, you know? Like there's some people here from my team, they probably know, I tinker like crazy, and I have to keep it as my own mental model of like healthy tinker, unhealthy tinker, what's going on, are you plugging a gap, how do you like shift that in your mind and reflect on your actions? So those are the two perspectives I take. Is a company setting you up to succeed? Are you starting to do the work yourself to delegate?
I think process goes into it, like identifying process, being very clear with expectations, what success looks like, saying, hey, you know, if it's a project, I am expecting you to send a status report on Wednesday. The customer expects it. This is what we're going to do, or this is what we're delivering. So very clear expectation setting with your team and letting them succeed, like finding delight in their success, which is really part of it. I'm not the best coder, and I had to, you know, say there's people that are more amazing on my team on the technical side. I had to let those technical skills go a little bit so that I could be what the organization is, so I can provide more opportunities for more people.
It's a really hard transition because we often promote our individual contributors that are high achievers and deliver the best work, and then all of a sudden, like, they're the manager, and like, it is so hard to let all of that go, right? Because the work product kind of goes down before it goes back up when you get your manager like sea legs on. So it's all that Jenn said. You've got to let it go slowly. I mean, it's going to take you some time, but at some point, for sustainability and for the benefit of their careers, they've got to do that part.
Find someone to protect you.
Good point.
Like, you should have someone above you that's looking out and checking in on you, because transitioning out of your job, it takes time, but they should be protecting you of not promoting you and expecting you to do existing as well as more. So find a mentor.
So when I was first became the VP of Sales Operations at the consulting firm, so I had 4 people on my team, I think 3 or 4 at the beginning, and I was really bad. Like, I was not a good manager at all, because I'm a perfectionist and I have a process of the way I do everything, and I wanted everyone to do it the way that I wanted it done, and that's not how it actually works. So my coach, so I had a different coach back then, but my coach was able to say, you know, do you want to be a manager? And I'm like, yes, like I want to be good at this. I'm just really bad at it. And so he was able to help me and give me guidelines. And one of the things that you said about just having really clear expectations. And it's like, okay, this is what needs to be done. This is the deliverable. This is when it needs to be done. And then when it didn't get done, I'd get all mad about it and then not say anything. And he's like, well, you didn't hold up on your side of the bargain. Like, he was supposed to do it, but if he doesn't do it, it's your job to bring that up in real time and not like fester on it and wait. And so, you know, being able to just have that clear set of expectations, but also have clear expectations on yourself, that as a manager, if someone doesn't do something well or does something well, you need to make sure that you have that open line of communication, have like weekly one-on-ones or like whatever that is, and then have a tracking system for yourself at the beginning until you can gain that trust where you don't have to have that anymore. And then you know that the person is just going to do it. So that was the toughest part for me.
So thank you. Yeah, this has been really helpful to hear. And I'm interested, because I know we were talking a lot about kind of work-life balance. And I'm sort of sitting here thinking that if this was a panel of male founders, we probably would be having a different conversation. So I'd love to hear kind of how you feel like being a woman maybe influenced things or made you think differently, or just, yeah, kind of what that effect has been on your journeys.
Thank you.
So I think for me, the toughest part for me was just knowing that I couldn't do everything. And I think that sometimes men don't really think that way, and they, you know, they're not a mom. And I know that's kind of bad to say, but like, you have that mom instinct in you, I think, and you just, you know, you have so many things, and we all think that we're superwoman and we can do everything, and we are superwoman, but that doesn't mean you have to do everything. And I just think for me, it was that piece of just being able to have that vulnerability and just say that I can't do everything.
You know, we had 50-50 female, male on the leadership team, and that was very helpful. So one thing is just surrounding with a more balanced team can kind of help create balance in the organization, because there are differences.
Oh, yes. You're good. I'll say like a couple things. It is different being a woman in this position. Early on, and after like the 6th article, I actually, not because I'm like ashamed or sad of being a mom, but I was like, can you please stop asking me about how I do this as a mom? Because you never ask Niji how he does it as a dad. There's not a single person in the press who starts with like, Niji, how do you balance having a toddler in a company? And I was like, I've answered this question a lot. I've basically said it's hard, borderline impossible, and I need a lot of support. Can we just like stop? Like, and so I think you're right. I love these opportunities, like talk about what it's really like, but it is a worthwhile pursuit of how do you create the space to be, I would just say, like taken as seriously as your male counterpart, to have the assumption not always be that we want to talk about the fact that you're a married co-founding couple, or that you're like talking about your child, or this, that, and the other is an interesting kind of like thought experiment there. I think the other thing that's just worth saying is that I would love to say that this is a world where Because I have the CTO and founder title, I am treated equally and fairly as my founder and as other C-level executives across the table, and that is not universally true. And so that is something that I, very early on, I had experienced it before in tech. I didn't think that this title was going to protect me from it. And it was made very clear to me very early on that it was indeed not going to protect me from it. The thing that I think a lot about there is like, who is your community and what team do you build? So I've had many senior men on our team come to me and say, Jen, what the heck was that conversation? I'm like super frustrated with the person on the other side. What can I do for you? To which I say, honestly, you can't. This is the world, but you can see it and you can acknowledge it and you can support me with that language of like how we together move forward and kind of correct that situation. So I think about that a lot where I don't think it benefits any of us to pretend like that stuff isn't happening. We can't fix it all at once. But as if you get the opportunity to, you can choose to frame things in certain ways. So there's forums in which I want to talk about all the things that we've talked about here. This is one of them. And there are other forums, literally every press article, that I don't need it to be about my family every time because that's not what they're asking of my co-founder. And when they start doing that, I will think we have won across the board. Because Niji freaking loves our daughter, and he would love to talk about trying to be a dad and a CEO, but no one is ever asking him that. So that's kind of like my thing. I'm like, I'd love to talk about it when we all talk about it equally a little bit more. But it is something that happens. It also happens in fundraising. I think it's worth saying I feel extremely lucky that I have a co-founder who is extremely business savvy, and is a man. He is not white, so that has a little bit to play in it. But I've had some very interesting conversations in the fundraising and with some of our investors that I thought, awesome. If it was me and Blakely or Stephanie or anyone, that this would have been a weird moment. And so that does exist and is part of the journey here. And it's something that will be there for a while, but doesn't mean that it stops you from doing what you're doing. It's just a thing we have to wrestle with.
I would also say that, fundraising specifically, it's such a bro world, and I swear they try to scare you with the craziest jargon, and it was so intimidating when we first started doing it. If anyone needs a 5-minute lesson on all that jargon, I can give it to you and take all the fear away. So part of it is just don't let them stop you, right? And you kind of have to show up and, I don't know, be ready for it. But it's tough. It's still tough. It's always it's tough.
I will say the upside of it though is I actually it's hard to be a founder, and I think the advantage of being a woman founder is that often we're more able and willing to talk about it in really real terms about what's happening in our life. So from a community perspective, it's not to say that there aren't other founder communities, but I have found the willingness and openness of this community to support and talk about it and kind of dig into those things to be really, really helpful. Any senior position is lonely in its own way. Founding is a little bit like the definition of insanity, kind of. And I think there is a power in being part of a community who is willing to be vulnerable about that and doesn't have to be that super person, all the time. So for all of the downside I just said, right, there's this upside, which is we get to sometimes have a little bit more of a full experience together, I think.
I think the vulnerability is something that I had to learn because I was, had to be double time to be equal to a male counterpart. Being in tech, 21 years in consulting, sitting at a table, I looked much younger at 22, and they're looking at, and they would ask the male who was actually reporting to me a question, and he's like, I don't know, she's the senior consultant on it. And they're like, oh, wait. So, many years of that, of just having to do double time and just to be treated as an equal, it made me better. But it took a while after starting the company to kind of soften that and become vulnerable and find my safe places where I can be and be like, I don't know it all. I'm surrounded by these women up here, these people down here. They're all brilliant and they all have great ideas, and just being able to ask the question has actually made me stronger.
If you had to do it all over again, what would you do differently? I mean, here we are looking at people who are thinking about, ooh, if I wanted to do this, what would it take? So what are the lessons you've learned, especially in those early stages, that you would, revise?
Sleep.
I would have started therapy in year 1 versus year 12, personally.
I think I probably, if I could have waited a little bit longer, I would have waited a little bit longer and been able to hire another person, even if it was only part-time. I kind of flip back and forth a lot between, am I ready to hire a full-time person? In the mentor-mentee session yesterday, I said my 12 to 18-month goal is to hire 1 to 2 people full-time so that I can actually take a vacation. But I think that I would have hired somebody at least part-time at the beginning. And saying that, I'm wondering why I haven't done that now, because if I still haven't. But I think that just being able to, we've said it 100 times, I think, so far, like, you can't do it all yourself, and I'm still doing it all myself. So I think that there might be some soul-searching therapy going on right now. I might need to go home and think about that. But yeah, that's the one thing I would have done differently. And I did start therapy in year 1 and not after that.
I think I need your therapist. I would have started sooner, like, truly. I absolutely love what I do. I love the team and being able to do it differently. I'm passionate about it. I would have done it sooner.
I bought time because it took me a second. I would have spent more time learning about the full breadth of our business earlier on. So we're a founding team where my husband is a CEO and he was doing all the go-to-market. That sounds, in the early days, it was literally, he was like selling, supporting, onboarding folks, and I'm engineering and product. And as we scaled, I think it's a natural thing that happens. You lean into what you're excellent at, and we were staying out of each other's lanes, which made us really great in the early days about what was going on. And now that I've started to scale my team and have a great team there, I'm getting a lot more time to learn about the business, and not just like the high level of the business. Like some of my partners across the board are, I'm like in their data and in the details, and it's fascinating and it's really great. And I'm not doing it because I need to do anything about that. It's about context and being able to really support more holistically. And when you asked about growth, right? This is a growth thing for me. I actually left my job to start full-time at agency because I really wanted to go back to being an engineer. And my team laughed at me. They were literally like, Jen, you were not going to do that for more than 6 months before you love teams and you love problems. And they were right. I was a full-time engineer at our company for like 8 months before I hired other people. But looking back on it, I should have been spending more time with folks across the aisle to gain better context, to make me a better leader as I was scaling up my team. So I'm doing that now, and it's really fun because it's like a big thing for me to learn. But it would have been awesome if I'd done that like 18 to 20 months ago. And like, I checked the therapy checkbox a long time ago, but also therapy.
I would have also probably went and realized the funding and the things that are available that I just didn't know early on. Like, I really shouldered it. I said, we bootstrapped everything and the growth, and there's some really great opportunities for women that I did not know about, and I did things the hard way. So I would do that differently, 100%.
I had a question. It's more broadly about the Salesforce ecosystem, like with the benefit of obviously experience and being in the roles that you're in now. I was curious if you have noticed any trends, positive or negative, that you wish people were talking more about or were more aware of, that now that you've, like I said, gone through your careers established, et cetera, and you're able to recognize things more quickly because of the benefit of your experience that people maybe are not paying as close attention to, that you're noticing, that people should be aware of, and like I say, either good or bad in the ecosystem.
Oh, I'm passionate about this one. I attended PKO, which is Partner Kickoff, and we were invited being as part of the equality, and they're doing a lot of things to nurture and support diverse partners. Previously, smaller partners were not invited. We attended, and maybe 5% of us there were female. And just looking around, so the industry, while we're seeing the change coming up from the bottom, we're still not seeing it at the top down. So that was really disappointing being there, and I looked around and like some things have still not changed.
I'll just say this from the technical side on the ecosystem. I don't know trends-wise. I think something I've noticed over like the arc of being in it so long is that, and it's actually exciting to me. I think it's really important to value the fact that the Salesforce ecosystem has evolved in its technical complexity pretty significantly in the last couple years, and not just in like all the things you have to learn, but in the tooling and the way that you can start to actually interact with it, which I think is a really exciting time for folks who are working to bridge their way into a more traditional engineering role. So when I started working on the Salesforce platform, there was no IDE, there was no SDK, there was nothing. It was actually all in browser, and that was really fun. And then you try to deploy code, and it would run all of its tests, and you couldn't do anything except sit there and wait for like hours and hours and hours. And it wasn't helping me bridge beyond the Salesforce ecosystem. But one thing that I've really appreciated, seeing how my teams are interacting with it, is that there is starting to become more and more of that cohesion between Salesforce engineering and full stack engineering in terms of the tooling and skill. So if you are on the technical side and are leaning into that, and you are thinking about a path that is greater than the Salesforce ecosystem, when I was coming up, that path was generally expanding into other business applications. So it was more what I did with my career was I did sales systems, so Salesforce, bridged that into finance systems, marketing systems, so Oracle and all those things, where the pattern is really similar. It's about development within an application stack and then thinking about business problems. There are now interesting paths that allow people to go more into full stack development. And it's newer, but it's like leaning into that part of the Salesforce ecosystem that is bridging Salesforce engineering skills to more traditional engineering skills. I think is a really awesome opportunity for engineers on the other side coming in, as well as for folks in this ecosystem getting broader opportunities going out. So I always say like, I'm like the worst because most of my development was in 2011, 2012. So when you're doing Git and all the PRs and like all the CI/CD, my team was always like, "Yo, Jen, come on, you gotta like get with the times." But it's really cool to see that because it wasn't part of my early experience. And Salesforce has invested a lot in that, which makes it a more transferable skill set.
I've seen previous life, the mix of developers to consultants. Definitely in that mix has changed. The type of development work we're doing has we're doing a lot of user interface, a lot of integration, a lot of like complex things and the budgets of customers haven't necessarily changed. So we're actually able to do more with their budgets than we were previously because the tools have evolved. And I've seen the mix of, say it was 50-50 previously, maybe it's now 25-75 between development and implementation. So,
I will ask our last question, care of this lovely lady who lost her voice yesterday because she was so excited to be here. I'm filling in the why, but so final question would just be, obviously before we do the table talks, they'll be here, ask them questions, take their advice. But last question would be a mix of where did you find your coach? Where do you begin on that search for the personal side? And what's been the best part of this journey?
I found my coach word of mouth from our HR director. Velocity Plus is the name of Carolyn Keyes, Velocity Plus. think there's like a coaches network thing you can go through. You guys probably know better. Wait, what was the second part of that question? What's the best part of the journey? Oh. Getting to meet people like Mike, hiring like the biggest pain in your butt who ends up being your best employee ever. Watching other people's careers blossom. It's just those small moments, just building a team. It is hands down the most rewarding part, hands down.
So I think for me, because it's newer for me than the three of you, it's just kind of cool to actually say you're a founder. It's actually kind of cool. And working for yourself is always something that I've wanted to do. So I think and being able to travel and be there for my family. The coach. So I actually found my coach I was listening to a podcast, and this coach was on the podcast. And so I had a couple of meetings with her, and we really connected. And for me, that's how I found her.
Okay. The coaches that I've had in my career came through the jobs that I had. And then to the point of like larger community, some investors, and we have this now, provide access to and recommendations on coaches that have worked for folks in their portfolio. So generally, I think coach, like a therapist, like any good person you're talking to or a mentor, it's like you might have to work to find the right person. People have different styles. Some of them have been more effective than others. Find someone if you like them, great. If you don't like them, fire them, move on. It's okay. It's not your failure. Not everyone's style is going to work for you. So I think it's always worth saying. Because I've had some folks who maybe didn't actually benefit from a coach's perspective because it was really antithetical to how they wanted to operate. So I always like to say that. I'll agree with the best part of the journey is people. Teams are fun. There's I'm engineering, so of course I love a good problem to solve, but it's just really fun to watch a group of people solve a problem in a really cool way, in my view, and getting the opportunity to scale up the problems that we're solving and think about all the different kinds of problems we're solving has been the most fun, in my view. So it's having those moments where someone helps you think bigger, or a moment where you together come up with a better idea. Those are always really awesome to me. And then watching someone go take something and do something with it that I never possibly imagined could happen, and just kill it. That's the fun stuff. That's the stuff that sustains.
So I found my coach. I went to a client site, and I had most likely probably pulled an all-nighter before I got there. And I walked in, and he's like, "You need a coach, and here's who you need to call." And so that's how I found my coach. I've been working with her over 3 years. Sometimes consistently, sometimes I was just surviving. It's a journey as a founder. I meet founders and I'm like, you're crazy like I am. You started a company, because it is insane. My favorite part of the journey, getting to see the team. It's really about the team. I love my team. I get to see the awesome work that they do. I get to see their success, and I get to represent it. Which is a privilege. Like, I get to say, hey, look at all this cool stuff we did, or all the innovation, and I love it. Like, absolutely love it, and I'm humbled. We have our summit coming up. We're all remote, so I see everyone's pictures on the screen. I'm humbled every time everyone's in one room. Like, you look around, you're like, wow, there's a lot of you. So that it's a lot of fun. Thank you.
Thank you.